All right, what's up, guys? Welcome back. So, a little recap here of the 2024 running of the National Open at Williams Grove Speedway. I'm going to talk about who the top finishers were, go lap by lap, and what happened in this race. If you were not able to catch it on Dirt Vision, or maybe you did and you just want to hear a little bit more thoughts about the race, because I do have a couple. I honestly don't get too excited going into a race at the Grove. It's not the most exciting racetrack. If you watch this channel, you know that I am a guy that likes smaller racetracks, 3/8, quarter miles, 3/10 miles. Those style racetracks are way more up my alley. The Grove, it's the Grove, right? It's historical. It's cool to go there. It's cool to be there. It's cool to see all the fans and on Beer Hill and in the infield and stuff. The vibes are incredible at the Grove. The racing is not incredible, but I will say that this race was actually kind of entertaining. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like it was terrible because it wasn't. It was actually a pretty good race. There are a couple things that need to be addressed, though, like getting a catch fence around the racetrack or doing something so when a car does fly out of the racetrack that, maybe there's like some leveled off ground there so they're not flying way out and, off of a super high embankment or whatever. For three cars to go out of the ballpark there in one weekend, it just makes sprint car racing look really bad. And that's I was talking about in my video earlier, last week that, I want sprint car racing to go to the next level. And it's hard for that to happen when we have three cars go out of the ballpark at one of the marquee events, marquee racetracks in sprint car racing. For three cars to go out of the ballpark, it's just not a good look at all. And we need to get that addressed because it just shouldn't be happening anymore. Now, I'm not saying it's on the Outlaws, but, the Grove, it's been around for a long time, man. They need to get that stuff, fixed up, and they need to make it into that marquee facility because right now it is certainly not. But now getting into the race, it was a solid race, as I said. The guy from the front row won, as somebody predicted down in the comment section below during the video, looking at the top five guys from each of the factions: the Outlaws, the High Limit guys, and the Posse. We kind of all expected that to happen. The guy winning from the front row. That's usually what happens when you go to the Williams Grove National Open or just Williams Grove in general, especially for the outlaw races. But it was still relatively entertaining between Carson Macedo, Anthony Macri, Sheldon Hodenshield. Good run for a couple of guys up there as well, which we'll talk about here in just a moment. So let's go lap by lap here and take a look at what happened in this race. So lap one, it is Macedo and Macri on the front row leading the field to the green. Carson Macedo, cowboy up, takes the lead around the outside in turns 1 and 2. Turn 1 had a really, really tough rut section that a lot of guys were struggling with. We saw Hampton he went out of the ballpark because of the rough spot in turn 1, but it did make for a couple of entertaining moments when guys would hop through there. Left front would come up off the ground, left rear almost coming up off the ground. So that made it kind of entertaining. But as Macedo takes the lead down the back straightaway, there is a yellow coming out for Donnie Schatz. I believe Johnny Gibson said that the yellow was for Schatz, obviously, but his left front shock came off, I believe is what they said. He went to the work area and would come back out, and we'll talk about him more in just a moment. So a complete restart, which was good for Macri because he was the pole sitter of the race, but he lost the lead in the opening corner. But then on the restart, he does take the lead off of turn number 2 and shows the way for the first couple of laps. Lap 2, Sheldon Hodenshield gets by David Gravel and James McFadden off of turn number 4 at the same time in one corner. So, there was 2 lanes of racing. I am the biggest guy to criticize a track for not having good racing. The Grove, it was 2 lanes. It was 2 lanes of racing. I will not disparage that fact. And so Hodenshield getting by Gravel and McFadden off of turn number 4. A good opening couple laps there for Sheldon. And then on lap number 4, there is a slider for the race lead as Carson Macedo goes across the nose of Anthony Macri. Macri able to cross over off of turn number 4 and still maintain the lead. He would lead on lap number 5. Also on lap 5, James McFadden gets by David Gravel, moves into the 5th position. And on lap number 7, McFadden is just super, super good on the bottom, especially in turns 1 and 2. That was something that kind of really stuck out to me on the broadcast, was how good McFadden could get off of turn 2 on the very inside of the racetrack. Lap 8, Carson Macedo slider once again for the top spot. And this time off of turn number 4, he takes it. They are very close across the start-finish line. But Macedo is credited with leading on lap number 9. And Macri slips back into the 2nd spot. Then a lap later, Carson Macedo gets into traffic for the first time in this race. Lap number 10, James McFadden up to the 4th spot, getting by Sheldon Hodenshield. So McFadden's car in the middle stages of this race, in my opinion, was maybe the best car on the racetrack besides Carson Macedo. He was able to pass anybody and everybody all over the racetrack. The running order on lap 10 is Carson Macedo, Anthony Macri, Chase Dietz, who was in the third spot, was having a great run. We'll talk about what happened to him here in just a moment. James McFadden, Sheldon Haudenschild, the top 5. Then David Gravel, Justin Peck, Brent Marks, Brad Sweet, and Skylar G was in the top 10 on lap 10 of the National Open. Did not have that on my bingo card. It was a great weekend for Skylar G. There's no denying that. Lap 12, McFadden now gets by Chase Dietz. He's into the third spot now. So McFadden's car, just as I mentioned, you can put it anywhere on the racetrack and make passes, and he had a lot of speed down the straightaways, and McFadden was on the charge in the early stages of this race. Then lap 13, the first big incident of the night, Sheldon Haudenschild goes by Chase Dietz off of turn 2. They're going down the backstretch, going into turn 3. Sheldon looks like he's trying to run the slider line in turn 3, goes in on the bottom, maybe missed the bottom a little bit, and he kind of pitched the car sideways, does a half spin, and Dietz is right behind him, gets into the back of him. He ramps over him and does a flip, almost goes out of the park again, and he ends up on his lid. Sheldon, tries to keep the car fired, does a 360 or a 720 there, and ends up coming to a stop, but it is a red flag. The Outlaws would, side to the fact that Sheldon did keep the car running, and so he would get his spot back. To the dismay of the crowd on Twitter, they did not like that very much, but I am not one to comment on that. But I will comment and say that, Sheldon, I'm not sure what happened there. I think he would honestly take, full credit for that incident happening. He went into the corner, almost spun out all the way, got the car extremely sideways, and Dietz literally with nowhere to go. Ends a really good run for him. So, that's what happened there between Sheldon and Dietz. And so, as I mentioned, Sheldon would get the spot back. Then on the restart, Sheldon would get by McFadden. I have no idea how there was no damage to Sheldon's car, but he would get by McFadden for the third spot on the double file restart on lap 13. Lap 14, then Sheldon would once again pass another car. This time it is Anthony Macri. He gets by him for second with a slide job off of turn number 4. That was the place that everybody was making their passes. It seemed like in turn number 4 with that slider. Lap 17, the lead for Carson Macedo is up to 1.3 seconds. And at that same lap, Brad Sweet gets by Brent Marks. He's now up into the 6th spot in the 49 car. Lap 19, Skylar G gets by Brian Brown. He's now up to 9th. And a lap later, Tyler Courtney will also get by Brian Brown. He's up into the top 10 in the 7BC. Lap 21, the yellow comes out, and it's a red for a fuel stop because it sounded like they were burning more than a gallon of fuel a lap from what Johnny Gibson was saying there on the Dirt Vision broadcast. So if you do the math there, these guys are not running 40-gallon tanks on their sprint cars, and so they needed to have a fuel stop. And I think Carson even said in his Victory Lane interview that he was sputtering going to the scales after the race. So it was a good thing they did the fuel stop when they did, or else Carson would not have made it all the way to the finish. On the restart, McFadden gets back by Sheldon Haudenschild to take over the 2nd spot once again. And on lap 22, Brad Sweet gets by Anthony Macri. He's now up into the 4th spot. So Brad Sweet from 12th to 4th now, with still almost half of the race left. He was very, very good. I talked about it in that little preview show that I did on Friday or on a Thursday night. And, I talked about Brad being relatively good there in the last couple of races at the Grove, although he had not been there in an entire year, and it did not matter. The 49 car was on point in this feature. Lap 24, Donnie Schatz is back up to the 9th position after going to the work area. So basically, Donnie started 16th. He blew, the shock off or whatever on the first lap of the race, went all the way back to 28th position, and was up into 9th by lap 24. So 24 laps in, and Donnie Schatz is 28th to 9th. And then on lap number 26, the lead for Carson Macedo is just under 1 second at 0.970. Lap 27, Bill Baylog is up to 10th position after using a provisional and starting 27th on the field. So Baylog and Schatz clearly showing that you are able to pass at the Williams Grove Speedway last night. Lap 30, the running order is Carson Macedo, James McFadden, Haudenschild, Sweet, and Macri, the top 5. Behind them, it's Gravel, Peck, Marks, Schatz, and Baylog. And then the next lap on lap 31, Baylog gets by Schatz, and he's into the 9th spot now. So 27th to 9th for Bill Baylog on lap 31. And at the same time on that lap, Carson Macedo gets back into the back of the field, and he's into traffic once again. Lap 35, Sheldon gets back by McFadden, takes the spot away for second position. McFadden slides by him in turn 4, but Haudenschild able to cross back underneath him, maintain the second spot across the line. And Brad Sweet is also in the mix as well. He's relatively close. So basically a 3-car battle going on for the second position with just 5 laps to go. And then late in this race, Carson Macedo's car, it seemed like, was really, falling off the pace. I mean, lap 38, Sheldon is closing in very, very quickly as Carson is struggling to get by lap traffic. Lap 38, I had to write this down because as I wrote these notes as the race was live, as it was happening. Carson Macedo was the same speed as Landon Crawley. Like, he was not able to pass him, and when he did finally get by him, Crawley was sticking right with him on the bottom, not in the preferred line, and, they were relatively the same speed, which I thought was very interesting with 2 laps to go. And Sheldon is closing. He's closing, makes a little mistake coming off a turn 4 late in the race, which maybe cost him the win. But still, on lap 40, Sheldon gets very, very close at the finish line. It is like a car length and a half, maybe 1 car length between the two at the finish. And Carson Macedo is able to win his second career Williams Grove National Open. And as I mentioned, he was sputtering at the scales after the race. He was almost out of fuel. So Macedo would get the win from second. Sheldon Haudenschild 5th to second in that 17 car. Brad Sweet with 12th up to the 3rd spot. James McFadden 6th to 4th. Anthony Macri led the first 8 laps, would end up in the 5th spot. David Gravel, not a factor in this race ever. Not one time. I had him as number 1 guy for the Outlaws going into this weekend. I mean, obviously a solid run, but he went from 3rd to 6th. That does not happen very often for David Gravel, especially at Williams Grove. He definitely struggled, but still a solid run for him. Brett Marks, 10th to 7th. Justin Peck was 9th to 8th. And then Bill Baylog, 27th to 9th for him. Then you got Logan Schuart, 17th to 10th. That was the top 10 in this race. Tyler Courtney, then Donnie Schatz. Chase Randall was 13th. 14th was Danny Dietrich. 15th goes to Skylar G. I think Skylar G is just happy to make the show. This is not a Skylar G track by any means. A 15th place run for him. He was in the dash. He's got to be happy with how that thing turned out. Brock Searfoss, 16th, 17th for TJ Stutz, 18th for Buddy Kofoid, who did win the prelim show on the afternoon portion of the race. And then he got into a big wreck in the heat race and had to take a provisional and was only able to muster an 18th place run. 19th, Casey Kane, 20th for Brian Brown. 21st went to Chad Trout, 22nd to Landon Crawley, 23rd Lucas Wolf, and 24th went to Troy Wagaman Jr. Gio Selzy, I don't know what happened to him. He got into a huge wreck early on in the night, and he started 23rd, and then he got lapped and pulled in and just did not finish the race. Same thing for Darren Pittman. He got into a wreck early on in the night. He finished up in the 26th spot after coming in through the B main. 27th to Chase Dietz. He started 4th, and then Freddie Raymer ended up in 28th position. He did win the Williams Grove Track Championship this weekend, but did not have any results to show for it at the National Open. And so Raymer and Dietrich are 2 guys that are very good at the Grove in regular season action, but they cannot qualify when the Outlaws come to town, and they continue to struggle at these big races. But that's what we got here for this race recap at the Williams Grove National Open. Let me know your guys' thoughts about some of the things that happened, the cars going out of the ballpark, Carson Macedo getting the win, the wreck between Sheldon and Dietz. Should Sheldon have gotten his spot back? I don't know. I'm not going to comment on that. But let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Make sure to hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and I'm going to talk to you guys again here later on today. Going to have a race preview coming out for High Limit Racing come up at I-70 Speedway on Tuesday night. So stay tuned for that, and we'll talk to you guys again here soon.